looking at business continuity. And now you want to ensure that even with COVID-19, the business is a going concern. Now we are looking at business continuity for remote work. We want to ensure that at the minimum, all computing devices, of course, I'm on the go. Some of my agents, some of my sales agents have mobile applications that are business inclined to access office data on their mobile phones. Some of them have tablets, okay, that they use to access office data. Some of them have laptops that accesses office data. And now you have to think, what are the minimum security technical baselines that must be achieved by every user within the organization? At a minimum, we would all like to see a scenario whereby every system, every endpoint, every device has a soft firewall on all the time. It only takes 1 second of error on a system for an attacker to exploit a vulnerability on a PC. You want to ensure that your firewall is always turned on at all times, from preventing attackers to gain access to your personal or company data. It is very important at this point in time, and it cannot be overemphasized for all businesses. You also want to ensure that you have an up-to-date endpoint, and I'll put that in quotes as antivirus or anti-spyware. So we have a lot of attackers right now that are coming up with some kind of worms, virus, trojans, or spyware to actually peep and see what is going on, to look at what is happening on systems, on users' PCs, their computing devices. So you want to ensure that you have an updated endpoint to give protection against the most deadly viruses and ransomwares of this time. So it's very important because this will prevent you having lots of data, lots of information, having to worry about data being encrypted. All that will be gone if you have an endpoint on systems. Okay, it is important that that is up to date, and the new hatches, all right, that are out there are downloaded by those endpoints. So it understands, all right, the kind of threats out there now and has the protection to protect against those attacks. We'd also like to consider to manage your operating system. Most operating systems today are unmanaged. As an organization, you might want to consider and look at having a central system that manages system getting updates, having the latest security patches, having the most important security patches downloaded to those systems. You also want to consider ensuring that all web URLs, all right, that are being accessed are genuine. So of course, looking at even browser security, ensuring that all browsers have the minimum of TLS 1.2, which is the Transport Layer Security 1.2, to ensure that the encryption within the connection from the endpoint to the remote destination cannot be interrupted. So these are some of the things that you want to look at, because hackers are definitely taking, advantage of vulnerabilities at this point in time. We mentioned a couple of, few examples, of, some of them that we have seen in recent time. So we've seen organizations today that did not update their operating systems, and we have some organizations falling vulnerable to some open ports, to some vulnerabilities on their devices, okay, because they did not carry out these activities. So it is very important that every organization right now takes security as priority. You also want to deploy a secure socket layer VPN to ensure that remote workers connect securely to the remote office or to whatever workloads that they're accessing. And of course, you want to do this to prevent eavesdropping. You do not want a third party getting to see what is happening or the connections or the transactions between your remote users and the remote destination. You do not want that to happen. And of course, there's a whole lot of worry by the top executives and the chief information officers, as well as the chief information security officers. All right. As regards, I do not know how my users are getting internet access. Maybe they're using the public internet. So you want to ensure you have an SSL VPN in place, which is a secure socket layer virtual private network in place, all right, that encrypts the connection while users are accessing organizations' data. This is very important as we have seen in recent time, all right, attackers exploiting this kind of vulnerabilities that are happening in to their users and in the organization. So whilst the previous slide talked about encryption while data is in transit, so you want to also look at encrypting data that is at rest. So of course, encryption basically, all right, is to ensure that people accessing that data on that system are actually those people that are authorized to access that data. So you want to say that, for example, if an attacker has a database or an Excel sheet pulled from an internet malicious database with the email address of your customer or your staff and the password, or he has some combinations to those passwords, and he tries multiple combinations and he gets access, you want to ensure he doesn't even access that data, all right? So encrypting data address says that if you steal my laptop today and you know my username and password, that is not enough for you to get access to my computer, because you need to put a decryption key that will give me access to that laptop. So it's very important that we ensure that whilst we focus on encrypting data in transit, also data at rest must be encrypted. All right. It prevents against, data loss prevention. All right. If that laptop should get stolen today, we have seen reports of violence happening all around. 1 million boys, no salary boys everywhere. If they happen to break into any house today and get that laptop, that data has been breached and has been compromised. And it can lead to reputational damage and also have its financial impact. So every business today would want to consider this option and ensure that they have that security for data at rest. So of course, while businesses today want to still continue to have their daily meetings, their monthly strategy meetings, their weekly strategy meetings, just for them to keep up with activities and ensure that business continues, you want to make sure that while those meetings are happening, no intruder can intrude into those meetings, and you must not have any form of vulnerabilities while having meetings. So, of course, we've had recent times of some OEMs today that customers use to have such kind of meetings, and an intruder intrude into that meeting to either sniff information or to either interrupt the meeting or to even disrupt and ensure that that meeting doesn't happen in the first place. So you want to look at having a secure virtual meeting channel that while you are having meeting with your colleagues, with your management, nobody can actually interrupt that meeting, to ensure that that meeting is secure and it's only between the stakeholders who have the links to access that meeting or who are authorized to be in that meeting. So it's very important to consider what kind of tools today are you using to have your virtual meetings. The biggest group of organizations recently that happened about last week and a half, the G20 summit, was held using Cisco WebEx, for example. And we had leaders across the big 20 organizations and countries meet together to discuss during that session. Most organizations today adopt Microsoft Teams, where people leveraging their pro Microsoft anyway. So people leveraging Teams today have secure meetings. They connect through different locations, coming into a central, conference and having a session without having intruders intruding into that meeting. So you want to also explore this option because it is very, very important for businesses globally. You also look at enabling multi-factor authentication. You want to ensure that people who are accessing data actually who they are. So right now, every business focuses on people addressing my data are who I think they are, who I know they are, people that should have access to that data. So typically, for example, an SSL VPN user on its system connects via SSL VPN to a remote destination and also has to authenticate using another means of authentication to verify that this is truly me connecting. So you want to ensure that this is in place for every organization. At a minimum, you must have another means of authentication. So besides the person's username or password, he must have like a PIN, a pattern, fingerprint, facial detector, one another means who the person is. So this could be physical object like a physical token. It could be a mobile device. Okay. It can actually be a biometric scan, fingerprints, a palm scan, whatever. Just to say it is who exactly it is accessing that data at that point in time. So, like we said in previous slides, looking at the threat landscape and seeing how evolving it is, not changing that much, but also still being there present, and also cyber criminals building on top the existing, landscape. We want to ensure that we have the minimum of all this in place to guarantee a secure environment. You also want to ensure that you sensitize all users. So, like they say that users are actually the weakest link in the cyber kill chain. All right, it takes a user to click on an email to bring down an entire organization. So it is that scary as it sounds. So organizations need to focus on sensitizing their workforce. It is very important now, as mentioned earlier, that every user is going to become a technical person. They must become technically inclined, every user. So you want to use some tools out there right now are doing this perfectly, helping you sensitize your users, whereby users are tested, all right, and organizations are getting reports on the knowledge, that users have. So if some users today are weak, you get a report, and you have that user do a test, and test upon test until when they succeed. So you want to ensure that sensitizing users is top priority for you. We must remain vigilant as organizations. We must remain vigilant as, you know, professionals, IT professionals, no matter all the security investment we put in place. All right, users must be sensitized and educated to ensure that you have a protected and secure organization. So, of course, also it is very important. It's very important that you manage how users use peripheral devices on those systems that is being used to access organizations' data. Very critical, you have today people using the same USB they give to third parties on official systems. And those USBs today can have malwares that once you plug them into the system, it runs an executable file, all right, on that system, and it begins to have keylogs and all that, spying. Someone has reporting to a command and control center doing CNC callback. So you want to ensure that you want to manage that. And as you can see, all right, 14% of attacks got into USB and external devices. So companies want to look at the policy of how users manage mobile devices. So some companies today have built mobile device policies where users sign in to say that while using these laptops, you do not access peripheral devices. Possibly you do not even use DVDs and all that. So that is in place as for now. Looking at the threat landscape, 14% of attacks today got in via USB. Okay, so we need to be very, very attentive to this to ensure that users understand all this information and they can also adhere to it. Because, like I said to you, inserting a USB into a system can also even crash the system, can install a ransomware into the system, and you have to pay huge amounts of money to get that information back. And this is why most businesses today are really looking deep into security, really investing into security, ensuring that they have a defense in depth defense system to ensure that all round protection around security is guaranteed. So it is something you want to consider, as people, as organizations, and of course across the globe in general. Then as well, it's very important at this point in time, all right, to enable the use of cloud storage for files and data. Very important at this point in time. We're also talking about how much organizations, with regards the kind of traffic coming back into the on-premise, considering their already, existing investments, all right, and cannot even manage. They can't even manage that traffic. So right now, businesses are saying, you know what, for availability, for integrity of data, for even security of data, we're moving all this data to the cloud today. And the beautiful thing is, all right, we have OEMs today. We partner with Microsoft, and Microsoft is delivering these services across the globe today. All right, at zero cost. Some of them at zero cost. All right, so organizations are leveraging this technology, this future technologies to ensure that they can achieve business continuity, they can embrace this future technology and ensure that they have stability of services, they have availability of services, and at large, you have your IT team focusing on more strategic things and allowing, every other thing on the cloud to keep on running autonomously. It is very important as well that you want to make sure you know about shadow IT. Very important. So some people ask questions around shadow IT, how bad is it? What is the impact on businesses? There's so many questions. Users, but they have some tools that they want to work with to ensure that they remain productive. While the intention remains good, but in the long run, the business has to suffer it, IT has to suffer it, and it becomes a huge headache and burden upon the organization, and the organization is put at risk. So this here on my slide is a picture of an application called Trello. So Trello is an application that helps businesses and organizations, all right, to stay productive. The intention was good, all right, but with Trello today, you have this application public to the globe, all right. It also is indexed to Google search. So meaning that as a user, as a customer in an organization, all right, with Trello, every information around HR, around finance, around HMO, around to ensure that you look at DNS variant security. All right, there's so much to look at right now that identifies shadow IT. So DNS variant security would identify such kind of cyber applications and also even risks users based on certain risk parameters to tell you these are your top risk users, your low risk users, your medium risk users. And you have all this, all right, available today and is being consumed to ensure that security is treated as top priority by businesses. So like I said to you before, while your users have good intentions, but at the end of the day, the CISOs had to suffer it, the CIOs had to suffer it, the organization had to suffer it because this kind of application, Trello, is indexed to Google, and from a Google search engine, people can access your HR information and all your data, and you do not want that to happen. So it's very important at this point in time that organizations globally take a look at this, sensitize users, know what tools are being accessed in their organizations, and put some level of controls into ensuring that this doesn't run in your organization. So you want to also ensure you have DNS layer security and cloud access security brokers in place that gives you at a pane of glass that protection that you require as an organization. Like they say, attack starts from the DNS. So we all ask, what is DNS? So when every user on their system today, all right, once they go to that web URL to go to a destination, the first thing that that system does is to do a DNS query. So at the point of doing that query, you have that DNS layer security in place that doesn't allow your users to get to remote malicious destinations. At this point in time, the connection between your endpoints and remote attackers database hasn't even been established. So it's a more proactive way in ensuring that security is enforced within your organization. And the beautiful thing about this is it's on the cloud. So anywhere, at any time, the IT security experts can actually check and see at a pane of glass what everybody is accessing. They have policies in place to manage destinations that people access and people go to. And this is very important at this point in time where you have remote work being enforced by many organizations today. So you ask yourself, is your endpoint okay? Is your firewall okay? If you have all these controls in place, was that okay for you? And I can tell you today that there is no single organization that will tell you they can provide you the 100% security to guarantee that your environment is safe. So you want to look at a defense in-depth scenario, having multiple defenses to tackle security issues across your environment. So we're looking at enforcing zero trust for organizations, looking at the adoption of zero trust. So zero trust model is a technology that ensures that people access only what they have permission to access, and at certain times that they have privilege to access those services. So looking at this presentation here, we see that security policy is enforced across every location for users accessing company data, company applications, company infrastructure, network, wherever and whenever. So we can't talk about ensuring business continuity without looking at zero trust. So it is very, very important. And of course, now we have said we have moved from an era whereby there is no inside network. So everybody is now working from the outside. So your customers are as good as people out, or your staff are as good as people out there that are trying to access a google.com. So you want to ensure people are who they say they are and enforce that policies manage those users accessing your services and your systems. So it is very, very important at this point in time, very important that we have this as in place in every organization.